Hello and welcome to, is it episode 3, I think, of the TORQ podcast. The last podcast, I think, was a little bit heavy, wasn't it, Cav? It was on glucose fructose ratios, so not a lot of fun to be had there. Not sure if it's going to necessarily be a lot of fun today, but we thought we'd sort of lighten the mood a little bit and cover uh, the subject of sort of nutritional and training pitfalls. So Cav's obviously a former sort of top elite athlete, and he coaches as well. I've got a lot of coaching experience, and I think over time we kind of see people making mistakes, don't we? And things that we think, they're pretty obvious to us, and I think if we could just give people a little bit of insight into uh, how they can improve their training fitness with some really simple little steps. That's the kind of purpose of today. So, yeah, hopefully you'll find it interesting. And I've got no idea what Cav's going to say, and he's got no idea what I'm going to say. And we think it's probably better that way. So we'd like to just spark off a bit of a discussion, really. So I don't know, Cav, first nutritional training pitfall. Hit me with it, and then let's see where we go.
Gonna go for a real simple one to start with. Is just simply not fueling and eating enough.
Hmm.
Obviously, there was the big hype around low carb, low energy availability stuff in like 2008. All the rumors of sleeping pills and everything. The modern media is definitely pushing that higher consumption narrative, but you still see it like very often, even in the professional space, of people not eating enough.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, yeah.
It's the quickest way for things to come undone.
Mm.
You're going to be bonking. It's going to impact your mood. It'll impact how you adapt to the training. It'll impact how prepared you are for the next day. There's just lists of issues when you're not feeling well enough, and it's the simplest thing you could do day to day to
Yeah.
make sure that you're improving in your training.
I mean, that kind of overlaps with one of the things that I was, it's quite an interesting discussion because it really overlaps with, um, we've always had this mantra at Talk of eat today for tomorrow.
Yes.
And I think there are times when that really, I mean, there's the general underfueling, which we can talk about as well. But from my perspective, um, if you were going to do a stage race, if you were going to go on a training camp, if you were going to do back to back riding, it's just getting into the psychology that when you're eating or consuming carbs on the bike or while you're running, yes, you're doing it to get through today, but you're also trying to keep in your mind's eye. I always think of it as, if you look at your knees up to your hip, and when your carb stores are full, you've got like it's almost like a little battery light up to the top of your hip. And as you start exercising, it starts to move down. When it hits your knee, that's when you bonk.
Yeah.
And it's all about consuming food to keep that battery light as close to your hip as possible constantly. So you just constantly put in fuel
Yeah.
in. And we both know, don't we, that if you fail to fuel on day one, you might get through day two, but by the time you get to day three, that's when you could
Yes.
blow up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very much in line with yours, Cav. Really, is that? Yeah, that's my kind of first tip. Would be eat today for tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. And this is something that like people talk about eating a lot, but for the context is if you say you bonk out on a training ride and you've got a 2 or 3 day block, it can actually take up to 36 hours to completely replace your glycogen stores.
Yeah.
And if you've done a 2 hour evening session, you've not fueled it appropriately, you had a long day at work, and you've bonked in that session, and then you're gonna wake up and tomorrow it's Saturday and you're gonna go do 4 hours with a bunch of friends and go to the cafe and stuff,
It's not going to happen.
You've got a very small window to replace all that glycogen, and like I said, if it can take up to 36 hours.
Yeah.
You just simply don't have enough time to put yourself in the best position for the next ride.
I've seen it on training camps where we've gone out, and a big part of the first seminar I would take is just you've just got to eat today for tomorrow. I've seen it where people have worked too hard, they've pushed the intensity too hard, they've not eaten enough, and day one and day two they're going like absolute guns, and then by day three they blow up, and like you said, because it's 36 hours, they're finished.
Yeah.
Unless they take a day off to replenish their glycogen stores, they're just completely on the back foot. Whereas those that are consuming calories right from the word go and they're being proactive, it never happens. You know, every single day
Yeah.
they can maintain that pace.
Yeah, definitely. And this is the thing: if you're eating during your session and you're not bonking, you're finishing the session with some of the energy left in that battery, so you've got less to replace. But also, the whole way through that session, you're also limiting potential muscle damage and things. So not only are you gonna have more energy the next day, you're also gonna get less sensations of like similar to DOMs and things like that as well. So
Yeah, because there is that link, isn't there, between carb consumption and protecting your muscles as well.
yes,
Because if your carb intake is inadequate, your body goes through a process called gluconeogenesis, where it turns protein into carbs,
yeah,
and that damages your muscle. So one of the biggest ways that you can protect your muscle is to consume carbohydrate and make sure you've got plenty of fuel availability as well.
yeah, definitely,
And
definitely,
I've noticed as well, the other thing that I used to talk to people about is with things like interval training. Um, you know, you need to have some decent carb stores to be able to perform those intervals at intensity. But people just think, well, yeah, because it's, you know, I'm doing intervals and it's less than an hour, I don't need to fuel. But if you're doing intervals on full glycogen stores and you think of that battery again, you know, you're going to be halfway empty by the time you finish your interval session. So if you don't fuel adequately and you want to go out and you want to do a 4 hour ride the next day, you then bonk on that ride. And
yeah,
so you've still got to, like, just because it's short and sharp, if you've got day after day after day, you've got to be constantly thinking about that battery, in my
yeah.
opinion.
So this is a bit more of an extreme example than like the quick simple tips we're talking about, but um, like high level professional racing, they talk about how they're consuming the calories through the day, and obviously these people are massively looking at their weight, and they're always like, if they're performing at race weight and things, they want to be on the money, they don't want to be overeating. So talking about glycogen, there are people that are like purposefully loading the carbohydrates like in the session and immediately after the session to make sure they're getting the most to replace the glycogen they've lost.
Yeah, yeah.
So if your glycogen full, they're not necessarily limiting the food they're eating, but they're considering how they can use the available carbs within the day to make the most out of the recovery they can.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it layers into everything really, and making the most out of the recovery time between sessions and consuming enough carbs to make sure you're topped up.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, it's interesting that you kicked off with that, and it's one that I'd had as well. So we do generally, you know, this also kind of rolls onto another one that I had. I mean, I suppose it's the same as your first point, Cav, which is, I find a lot of people, if you take away the sort of the general carbs in the diet, let's say someone was going to do a marathon, um, people just generally massively under fuel, don't they? Like during the marathon. So like sometimes, I mean, we talk to people on the trade stand, don't we? And sometimes, you know, you find yourself saying, well, look, if you do a gel an hour, which is in with TORQ is 30
Yeah,
grams of carbs an hour, that's actually better than a lot of people would do because you know so many people don't even do that.
yeah,
But then you find yourself saying, you know, well, you know that's good. But actually, when you know that that is the absolute bottom end of how someone should be fueling, you kind of feel quite glad when you can get them to take on 60 grams of carbs an hour, which is two
yeah,
gels an hour. And we still continue to say that. We say to most people, look, you know, if you can do 60 grams of carbohydrate, you know, that's okay.
yeah,
But it's nowhere near optimal.
yeah.
And it's amazing how many people are so far from the optimal amount of fuel they can take on board.
Yeah, it's a brilliant point, and it's really difficult in today's world of media saturation in terms of social media and all the information that's discussed on podcasts and everything. Like I work with some brilliant athletes, some world class athletes, and sometimes they have their own anecdotal evidence, which doesn't necessarily agree with the research.
The real evidence, yeah.
And there has been a media storm recently for the people in the running space. They probably know about it, about the celebrity. He was recently on a podcast and he said, "Oh, look, you can do a run on a marathon with no food and no water." Like, sort of, I'm not going to comment on the context because of the way he came out with it, and I don't necessarily know the context, but this is an example of what some people in the media space tell you to do, and it's not necessarily correct. A lot of people in the media space took it as something that they can do and should do, but it's important to, like you said, fuel and try and pay attention to credible sources rather than just
Yeah.
what people are anecdotally commenting on.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it's the difference between, he's welcome to that opinion at the end of the day, isn't he? But yeah, I suppose it's life, isn't it? It's talk is always about having that evidence base, and
Yes.
whenever
Yeah.
we say something, we support it with evidence, and that's yeah. In this world where there are just lots of opinions, you need to separate opinion from
Yeah.
the
Definitely.
reality, don't you?
Yeah.
No, it's really interesting. I think, yeah. So I think that sort of, the underfueling thing. I mean, I think we've pretty much covered. The other thing that I've got that's related to that is this concept of, and it's very very related, where people seem to think that an energy product will give them a boost. So,
Mm.
oh, I've got a hill coming up. I'm going to take this gel, and it's going to get me up the hill. And it's just a fundamental misunderstanding that I would always talk people through, is that carbohydrate should never feel like a boost. It should never. You should, if it does feel like a boost, you've
Da,
bonked or
da,
you've blown up.
da. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you've blown up and you've completely lost all your carbohydrate, you're dizzy, you don't know what you're doing, and you have a gel, yes, it will give you a boost.
Yeah.
Until that gel runs out, and then you'll be in the same place again. So you're on this constant roller coaster.
Yeah.
But to think that you can do like 140-mile sportif and have one gel, if you get yourself into trouble, that's the bit that really winds me up, because you're basically, what you're doing is depleting your glycogen stores, waiting to bonk, and then saying, "Oh, I'm going to have a gel just to pick me up." And of course, if this is any of you guys, I apologise, but this is, I'll talk to you, as an educator. If you think of your this battery example, your whole purpose of fueling is to keep that battery near the top. And if you do push harder and harder and harder, yes, that battery might start to leak down to the middle, but it needs to leak down to the middle as well as when you're fueling. So
Yeah.
you're putting fuel in, this exogenous carbohydrate, you're burning that and your stores. And the perfect sportif, if you're going to do 140-mile sportif, is to be taking large amounts of carbohydrate on board, starting with full glycogen stores and bonking on the line when you finish. I mean, that's the best time you could possibly get, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, because you're using everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just, it goes back to your underfueling thing, Cav. There's so many people who have these myths that they just carry this spare gel in their pocket to get them out of trouble.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting point, actually. So when you talk about an energy gel, so TORQ energy gel, 30 grams, there's only
30 grams of carbs.
yeah, four calories for every gram of carbohydrate. So that's only 120 calories. So like, if you say you compare that to a Mars bar or like a food product, so like you've
It's got loads of fat
jam
in it,
or
for instance.
toast, or jam on toast or something similar, like the energy gel itself will be a better fueling product. But if you talk about it in just the sense of calories, an energy gel is a completely functional calorie source, whereas toast isn't. But 120 calories versus if you're doing an hour on a bike and you've gone out and averaged 180 watts, the calories you're putting in from one gel is nowhere near keeping up with the calories you're burning on the bike. And this is the same for the runners, that like, yes, you might look at as a gel as this like energy dense product that's brilliant to take on, which it is, but it's still only a small proportion of what you're actually burning. So like, again, coming back to a more of elite level, like if we're talking about 120 grams of carbs, which the media are talking about, that's only 480 calories an hour. And for the more athletic people out there, those that are training or at like a reasonable level, you'll be burning more than that every hour.
Yeah. You're never going to reach energy balance, are you? And that's the thing, is like, God, that would be a dream, wouldn't it? If you could actually consume enough calories to counter what you're burning. But we've got absorption thresholds, haven't we?
Yes,
Which we talked about in the last podcast, So all of the research is looking at how much, I guess it adds weight to the past podcast, in that, the more fuel you can get in per hour, if you know what those physiological limits are and you can maximize that, then the higher you can afford to push your pace. And the longer you're going to last. And that's where personal best come from, and that's where winning races comes from, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
No, really interesting. No, I mean, that's covered a few of my points, actually. Have you got anything more to add on that particular subject, Cav?
Something that I think, well, we do talk caffeinated energy gels, so it kind of links in a bit to the fueling, but caffeine.
Mm.
Don't take a caffeinated energy gel 5 or 10 minutes before the finish. As
Yeah,
much as
very true.
you might feel horrendous and everything, whilst I'm saying don't take it 5 or 10 minutes before the finish, if you are going to take it earlier than that.
Yeah, yeah.
There are ways of getting caffeine in that deliver almost instantly. So chewing gum, a lot of people now use gum. It doesn't have a higher peak, but it enters the system quicker. But for a gel, it can take about 30 minutes for the caffeine to reach a decent level.
Yeah, because it's got a half-life, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it takes time to get in, and then it maintains at a high level, and the half life's 4 to 6 hours. So if you're taking a gel 10 minutes before a caffeinated gel 10 minutes before the finish, you're not gonna get what you
You
want out
cross
of
the
the
finish
product.
line,
Yeah,
you go, yeah, I feel great.
yeah, exactly. So if you're working with caffeine, it's just important to consider
The
that
timing
you
of
need
it.
the timing in that. Even if you're taking it like an hour before the finish, because the half life is so long, you're not necessarily making the most out of the drop off either.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yeah, I'd
so
almost say, like, even with the gum thing, I mean, what is the point with 10 minutes to go? It's
yeah,
like you need to be more proactive than that. You need to
yeah,
be thinking,
definitely.
I'm on a 2.5 hour race. Um, you know, you need to be taking that caffeine gel, what, minimum 45 minutes before the end?
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah. And
definitely.
so then it's reaching a peak at the important
Yeah,
part,
yeah,
which is with 20 minutes to go,
yeah,
and then you can maintain that peak.
yeah.
Because all you're doing, taking something 10 minutes before the end, is just affecting your
Fueling the
sleep,
walk to the
probably.
pub.
Yeah, fueling the warm down.
Yeah,
No, it's a really good point, actually. And I think, and also caffeine, it's all very individual, isn't it? Because some people don't take caffeine on board at all. They don't have tea and coffee. I'm sitting here having a coffee. I quite like my caffeine. So I'm going to need more. And I probably, as a matter of course, through an endurance race, take caffeine on fairly regularly just to feel normal. Because
yeah,
otherwise, this is what, I suppose this is another point. I haven't actually written it down, but, I always say to people, when you do the London Marathon and you take 2 cups of tea in the morning and a coffee mid-morning and so on.
yeah,
And then you're getting up in your hotel room. Uh, you have a cup of tea in the hotel room or something like that, and then you're down at the start. Why would you want to run that whole morning without any caffeine going into your system when habitually your body is so used to having caffeine? And caffeine's got a lot of performance benefits
yeah.
as well. So I would always say, it's just sort of adding to your point, really, is that make the caffeine gels part of your fueling routine.
Yes.
Um, Not necessarily for a performance boost, but just so that you don't feel crap.
Yeah, yeah, and definitely it's another discussion. Like you said, people have individual responses to caffeine. So some people might be highly reactive, some people might not be. But just for information, the general guidance is 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram body weight. Generally, after 6 milligrams per kilo, the side effects far outweigh any potential
Any benefit?
positives.
Okay, yeah.
But for a lot of people, they might start to experience significant side effects after like 4 or 5 milligrams per kilo. So this is why it becomes really individual. And it's important to, like we always say as well, make sure you trial what you're going to do the day before
Yeah.
racing. So important to make sure you're not
Make
going to
sure
have
you're
any
doing it in
issues on
training.
race day or event day.
Same with the fueling, as we've talked about before,
Yeah.
isn't it? There's no point in turning up to a marathon doing a completely new. That's the other thing, is like, with fueling and everything, people just saving their energy products for race day.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, that's nuts. It's like,
yeah,
why would you want to? You've spent all this time invested in training. It's really important. You've paid for a hotel. You've gone there. You've driven there, and then you just try something completely experimental or new
yeah,
on the. So absolutely, making sure that you with fueling, with caffeine consumption, just making sure that, because the confidence that gives you as well when you turn up and you just know, right, this is what I'm having for breakfast. This is my routine. This is what I'm
yeah,
going to do. This is how I'm going to fuel my race. All that uncertainty is removed.
yeah,
We're delving into psychology a little bit now, but I mean, that's I've got something on psychology, but I think it's so important that if you want to, and all the top athletes will do this, won't they? They'll have routines.
yeah. So for I was part of the GB youth program, and I raced at that sort of level where I started getting involved in some bits internationally. And yeah, it's something they always talked about, is that make everything. I control the controllables and
Yes.
don't worry about what you can't control. And within that, it just looks like building your routine into something that's become so comfortable that you don't even have to think about it. It's like when you wake up, it sounds to some people probably very dull. Like when you wake up on the morning, you know what you're wearing. You've got a routine around like the timing schedule. So if you know your race is at 11, you know that you always have breakfast 2 hours before the event or 3 hours before the event, and then you like have a specific bottle of hydration or energy that you'll drink an hour before the event. And building in all these routines takes away a lot of worry and adds in a lot of layers of control and repeatability. And
Did you ever play music? Like, did you have like a?
Yeah, so I generally had the same playlist every single time. And this is something else that you like roll through the motions. There is it's really bad, I can't remember his name now. That's bad. But there's a drummer who used to be GB Track.
I'm rubbish with names, so don't even.
I'm fairly certain he used to make his own beats for his warm up.
Right. Okay.
And
it's just having that familiarity, isn't it? And that's the thing. It's just having a familiar routine, and it's almost superstitious in a way.
Yeah.
And so the downside to that is if you can't have that routine, sometimes things can fall apart.
Yeah, definitely.
But at the end of the day, like you say, you're controlling the controllable. There's no reason why your routine should be disrupted because that is your routine. I suppose at the high level that you were at, the coaches surrounding you ensured that you could be in that bubble and do that routine.
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't quite at that level. So it was all self-managed. But yeah, it's like in the lectures and stuff we'd receive from the coaches, it would all be about just doing what you can, controlling your controllables, and then whatever you can't control, don't worry about. So it like obviously British cycling has big links to like the chimp paradox and stuff. And the way they teach it and things like that. So it's all just about like just rely on what you know. And if that's the thing, if something does go wrong on race day and everything you've done is within your controllables, you know exactly what you've done and you know what you can change next time.
Yeah. And then that and the fueling part of it is almost, yes, it's a physiological reassurance, but it's a massive psychological reassurance, isn't it? This is, I know I can do this. I've done this in training. I'm just going to execute on race day.
Yeah, definitely.
It's funny. So seeing as we're on the subject of psychology, which I think both Cav and I are sports scientists, so. It's not just about nutrition, and we're both coaches as well. And obviously, when you're talking to athletes, psychology comes into this a lot. So the kind of advice we're giving now is way beyond nutrition. But I've got one here that about self-belief, which there was a former road pro called Bob Addy, who I went and listened to. God, I can't even remember how many years ago it was. But he shared this poem that I'm going to read to you. Because it really, and whenever I was coaching people, I gave them this to look at because I just felt that it was so important that people believed in themselves, which is a massive part of performance. So if you take the nutrition out of it, and it's called "You Are What You Think You Are." Now it does refer to a man. So the pretext of this is it's a little bit sexist. So I always replaced it with person, but it doesn't rhyme. So I'm going to leave man in there. But there we go. But it says. If you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you've lost. For out in this world we find success begins with a person's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you ever win a prize. Life's battle don't always go to the stronger man, but sooner or later the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. And I love that because I think as a racer, it actually really helped me because I turned up. I used to race it was like a mid-summer cyclocross called Beastway. It was like in central London. I'd basically come. I'd done 3 races in the season, and I'd come second every time. And this guy just beat me. And I had a colleague at work, and he said to me, "How'd you get on last night?" And I said, "Oh, I got second again. It was elite." I said, "It's a really high level." He said, "Well, where was the first guy?" I said, "He was about 50 yards ahead of me." He said, "Well, why didn't you beat him then?" I said, "It's not as easy as that. It's really hard. It's a really hard level." He said, "Oh, I won't say what he said. He used a few expletives." And then that in conjunction with that poem, I turned up the next week and I beat him. And then the next week I beat him again. And I beat him every single round for the rest of the season. And it just shows that, yes, if someone's 5 minutes ahead of you, it's a little bit different. You know, you've got some training to do. But if it's you or them, you've got to make sure it's
Yeah.
you. You know, and I just think it's just an element of psychology that you believe in yourself, believe that you can do it. And that little story I've told was just an example. I learnt a massive lesson then, is that not to settle for second place.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just and what we'll do, hopefully, when Ryan does the cut for this, we can get this poem up on the screen so that you can all see it, and you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
screenshot it and send it to. Well, don't send it to people you want to beat. Just send it to the people that that you're never going to have to compete with.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, that's on the subject of psychology. That was that one. Have we got any? Have you got any other ones, or are we gonna? I've got a couple here.
It's not necessarily a point, but I've got a story from when I won one of my national titles, and I had a coach at the time who he was a brilliant coach, but when I turned up on the day, there was some of his other athletes at the event, and we were all in the same age group competition, and it was clear who he expected to win. And it's amazing what a little bit of fuel, psychological fuel, can do.
So it wasn't you.
Yeah, no, I wasn't the favourite for the event.
So I'm guessing that you just thought, I'm going to show him.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, that's how it felt to me. And yeah, I went out and absolutely annihilated myself. I think I averaged like 189 beats for an hour, pretty much.
Yeah, yeah.
Which for me is like, I'd call sustainable like 184 generally.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was way over, like, seeing the stars. I even dropped my bottle halfway around and
Yeah, yeah.
like trying to drink in a TT and ended up dropping it. And yeah, it's just the fuel doesn't necessarily have to be self-belief, but finding a purpose to do it as well.
Yeah, so the coach, in a way, instead of supporting you and saying, go on, Cav, you can do it, he actually gave you fuel in a different way.
Yeah.
And it's just the psychology of it is very interesting, isn't it? And
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
but then you took away from that probably a level of self-belief as well.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely. It was such a weird and interesting period, because I really, like, when I turned up to the event, I didn't expect to win ever.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I'd been injured for I'd only been training for 3 months because I'd been injured 6 months in the prior to that. So I didn't even turn up necessarily expecting to podium, never mind win. But that little bit of like pushing for some sort of vindication about,
Yeah.
I know I've got the ability. I've just had a bit of a bad run in.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But no, it doesn't, like, not saying that self-belief's a bad thing at all, because it's the best way to fuel it. Everything that you do psychologically should come from a healthy perspective.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong of fueling it with a bit of vindication
a little bit of anger sometimes. It's just controlling it, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. I think isn't it Djokovic who's very much fueled on the tennis court by I think the tougher the crowd get with him, the more insulted they are by him, the more he rises to the occasion. So everybody's got their fuel, haven't they? But when he's interviewed, he's a lovely guy. It's just when you and I think that's the other thing with racing is you can be the nicest person, but when you're out there, you're on a battlefield, aren't you? And it's that belief that you can be the one that comes out on top.
Yeah.
No, really interesting little subject there. I've got one here on that is getting back to nutrition a little bit, which is getting the carb fluid balance wrong, which is something that I find is a pitfall with people. So obviously in people's desire to get a certain amount of carbohydrate in, sometimes they can take on their allotted amount of carbohydrate, but take on inadequate fluid, which then causes kind of a bit of turmoil in their gastric tract. And something I've just learned through experience with racing and talking to people about is it's very easy to do. I did a race in Lanzarote, a stage race, and there was a big climb, and I'd done it the previous year, and they had a feed station at the bottom the previous year, so I was just completely out on my fluid. And it was a 40-minute climb in the sun. And I got there and the feed station wasn't there. They put it at the top this time, so it was 40 minutes away. and I knew I needed to fuel because it was a 5.5 hour stage. So I went up this climb without enough hydration, knowing I didn't have enough hydration, but I felt obviously I still needed to fuel. So I got 3 gels in, I think, or two or 3 gels up that climb just to make sure I got the carbs in. But my stomach started to turn to mush because I was drawing water out of my blood to digest it, and and I knew that. But because I'm a I've got a sports science degree, I understood what was going on. So what I did is I got to the top, and I just downed loads and loads of unadulterated water. Just put water in, and I knew that would bring me back. And then as soon as it did bring me back, I could just get back onto my fueling and get my fueling and hydration right. And I think this is the advice I give to a lot of people is if you do tend to overcarb for whatever reason, pure water. Just get plain water into your system, get everything back to equilibrium again, and then get back onto your fueling routine. So stop taking the carbs, get the fluid back in, dilute everything. And in a relatively short space of time, you're back on it again.
Yeah.
So it's just one that I just wanted to highlight because a lot of people do. There's a lot of reasons why people get stomach discomfort, too many to talk about now. But that particular one from dehydration is quite a common one.
Yes, definitely.
Have you got anything else, Cav? Because I've got a couple more.
On that, I think with the switch to more modern fueling, I know for a fact a lot of people mix their own high dose energy drinks, and they're putting like 150, 120 in a bottle.
Which is a lot.
Yeah, and they're just consuming, say, 90% of their carbs through fluid. In this I'd label gel as a solid. So like water and mix. And this is purely anecdotal, but for the last few years, if you turn up to any high level domestic race, just look around at the amount of people that say they're getting cramps. Like I remember racing. I realized I was younger, but like there'd be a handful of people that would get a cramp in a race, and now, like, I'm not shocked if there's like 20 or more every race, every big.
So
race.
they're just basic, because I mean the thing is when you mix a very strong energy drink, where does a drink finish and a gel start? Effectively, and this is the problem, isn't it? And it's a bit of a commercial sideline here because we obviously have the TORQ fueling system, and the whole point of the TORQ fueling system was it's not just about fueling; it is actually the TORQ fueling and hydration system. So the whole point of it is that if you're perspiring more, you drink isotonic fluid to get carbs and fluid and electrolytes in. And if you're perspiring less, you drink less of that and you eat more of the solid fuel. So the TORQ fueling system does actually solve all these problems if you follow it properly. But there are times where you can just get it wrong. But it's a really good point that you've made in that if you are going to mix energy drinks, there's nothing wrong fundamentally with making a strong energy drink, but you do need to get a hydration source.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, the fueling system solves all these problems, but there are obviously people diving into it that don't fully understand carb ratios, electrolyte hydration balance, things like that. And this is what I come back to again about media saturation, is that it's very easy to scroll through reels and pick out something someone said. Like everyone will be like, oh, everyone's consuming 100 grams, 120 grams an hour now. How can I do that easily? Or well, if I put loads of malto or sugar or something in my bottle, then I can get 120 grams. But then there's no conversation there about ratios or the amount of fluid that you've actually mixed with it. They need to have
along with it. Yeah. So, it isn't just about the carbs. It is the carbs and the fluid. It's absolutely. I mean, that was the point I was trying to raise. Is it's just you've got to get that balance right. Otherwise, things go.
Yeah, definitely.
Things really go south, don't they?
Yeah.
So just to reiterate the fueling system, if people aren't aware of it, it's just basically all of TORQ's products are 30 grams of carbohydrate. A gel is, a bar is, a jelly is. Or a packet of jellies are. So they're all 30 gram carb units. If you're aiming for 90 grams of carbs an hour, which is what we'd recommend for most people, it's about having 3 units. We also have an isotonic energy drink, which is this much fluid with electrolytes, and it's isotonic, so it's very, very easily absorbed. It's very good at hydration, but it also carries 30 grams of carbs. So if you're going to do a particularly hot event and you're going to be sweating a lot and you're losing a litre of fluid an hour, drink 2 of these an hour. that's still also giving you 60 grams of carbs.
Yeah.
So then you'd pop a gel as well, which would give you your 90. And that addresses every
Yeah.
single
Yeah.
issue that you have. Obviously, we the last podcast was about our new proto gels, which are 40 grams of carbs,
Yeah.
and we got a drink with 40 grams of carbs. The purpose being that you consume 120 with
Yeah.
this different ratio, but the principle is exactly the same.
Yeah.
So it's all about making sure that you get that, you know, you don't just do gels, or you don't just do drinks.
Yeah.
You look at the environmental conditions, look at how much you're sweating, and you just get that balance.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that's really cool. I've got I've got one more training one, which is this is just something I always notice whenever I'm sitting down for consultancy with people. Is so many people, every single ride they do is mixed pace. So they go out
Yeah.
and they just they go nice and steady on the flats, and as soon as they hit a hill, they race up it.
Yeah.
And then they freewheel down the other side. And my little nugget of advice, and you'll testify, you know, you'll I'm sure you'll agree with this with your coaching, Cav, is like there's nothing wrong with that. You know, effectively it's an interval session or a fartlek session or a mixed pace session, but you've almost got to say, well, that's what it is. But there's a lot of benefits, aren't there, from actually just staying in a zone and just keeping things steady.
Yeah, definitely. I actually attended a talk with Dr. Seiler a while ago, and it looked at and Matt Burnley from basically a talk on training zone distribution. And the thing was that they like the really intense section, it didn't necessarily, like, the more hours they did, it never grew in size. The thing that was growing in size was the easy stuff.
Yeah.
Like all these pros, they're not doing like 7 hours with efforts every day. It's like the zone that grows with the more time ability you have is just the general riding.
Which is the great thing about being a pro, is you have that time, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. But it comes back to what Matt was saying about mixed pace, is that if every session is mixed pace, then you're just ramming a ton of unstructured, really not really hard, but kind of hard.
Well,
stuff.
compromised in a way, isn't it?
Yeah,
kind of
definitely.
sort of hard, but you're too knackered to do it properly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So creating like a clear, like you've said, just sticking within the boundaries and making sure that your easy days are easy,
yeah,
and your hard days are
hard,
pretty much as hard as they can be.
Yeah.
And there are some simple guides to training, and one of them is, if you're on an easy day, it is an easy day. If it's a hard day, it is a hard day. And as soon as you like create that split of what needs to be a working day and what needs to be an easy day, it can create some really easy development and gain. So like, even for example, like some of the full-time guys, because they're full-time, they're like, well, if I don't have training today, what I'm going to do? Sit at home? I'm like, well, you're a full-time athlete. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah,
you can't go do 4 hours really, really, really easy to the cafe, because whilst that might be easy, it's not as easy as it can be to give you the space to do the hard stuff as hard as you can.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's people that I've spoken to that end up, like, the smallest day they do is 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
Every easy day is 3.5 hours, and it's really important to create that contrast between what is easy and what's hard.
And also that goes back into psychology. So I found, I mean, I agree with you entirely. I mean, it was exactly, trying to split those zones up so that people can focus on the quality when they need to do the quality, and not feel guilty about not going too hard on the easy days. But there's a psychology to that as well. And what I found is that people would push themselves harder on the hard days because they weren't so exhausted and because they weren't so frequent. And they rewarded themselves with, let's ride along and, just enjoy being on the bike and looking at the scenery. And it's amazing the developments that I saw in people that were just cycling. I mean, obviously it was a combination, but the easy cycling, like you say, there was a massive increase in their fitness just coming from the easy stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So no, I mean, obviously, we said we haven't compared notes at all on this. So two coaches here that are saying the same thing, and we've recognised that, haven't we, with the athletes? I just got a couple of health ones really here, which probably relate more to my age group, because we start thinking about health a little bit more as we get older, which is and this is kind of in the contrast to performance in a way, because with performance, if you're doing really, really a lot of training, sometimes you're in a battle to get the calories in, aren't you? But it was about just increasing the amount of fibre that you consume. And I think if you're on the performance ladder and you're doing a lot of training, I mean, by virtue of the fact you're eating loads, you're going to be consuming quite a lot of fibre anyway. But for people like me that do less now, there's a very, very direct correlation that has been found between the amount of fibre you consume and how long you live, basically. And so that was the little nugget I just wanted to get across. I mean, I do much less hours than I used to when I was riding elite. But I do make sure that I have a lot of fibre in my diet for health reasons, and it's a good, it's good for your gut, good for your immunity, good for general health. Obviously, if you are a top level athlete, do look at fibrous choices, but there is a bit of a trade-off because sometimes the fibrous choices aren't as calorie rich, are they?
Yeah.
So you're trying to get that balance. But as I said, it kind of takes care of itself because of the volume of food you're consuming anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was just something a little nugget I wanted to get across, and the other one was vitamin C. The people taking a high dose of vitamin C, when outside of illness, really. And the RDA for vitamin C, slightly different for men and women, but it's under 100 milligrams a day.
Yeah.
So you can get that from an orange or two. And there are people just taking 1,000 milligram tablets a day, and we'd be the first, because we've got this product called Attack, to say that when you get ill at the first sign of illness, you just switch and you take loads. But I don't know if you've got any opinions on this, Cav, because I mean, obviously it's an antioxidant. Is there any research on taking vitamin C to counter the effects of free radical damage on muscles and stuff?
Sure. I don't have an answer for that one necessarily. My only 2 pence on this, without fully digging into some stuff, is we all like money, and when you're putting a lot of stuff in your body, sometimes you're making very expensive wee.
Yeah, that would be my argument, definitely. Yeah,
I must say, while certain supplements aren't terribly expensive, that like if you're overdosing is a very general term in terms of taking more than your body needs functionally. You are literally just putting money down the toilet.
Yeah.
And in terms of vitamin C, like you just alluded to, we always advocate for a food first approach here.
Yeah.
And if you can get it readily in your diet, fair enough if you have dietary restrictions. So like if people struggle, I don't know why you would struggle with this, but like if you're allergic to oranges or something, and you can't get vitamin C, then get a supplement.
Yeah.
But if there's a way of getting it in naturally, you should always do that first, and then you can always consult someone if you can't. Talk to a health professional. See, or even if you have, I know I just said about putting money down the toilet, but something you could consider is even getting like a full blood panel done, and seeing what you're naturally low on. So if that's vitamin D, omegas, vitamin C, if there's things that you're low or adequate, and then it'll be cheaper in the long run because you can actually address what you're missing rather than just guessing.
And it's really, vitamin D is probably the exception to the rule, isn't it?
Yes,
because
definitely.
The problem, so I mean, just to conclude on vitamin C, basically, we'd always advocate a diet first approach. So you won't find supplements on the TORQ website as such, but exactly what Cav said is kind of investigating what you need to take. Vitamin C, if you get ill, you need grams of it, and like we have a product called TORQ Attack, which is really highly regarded, because the moment you do get ill, vitamin C will protect your cells from infection, basically, but you need to take a lot, and that's how this product kind of works. So do dig in and have a look at that. But on a daily basis, that product is going to work much better if you're not peeing out 900 milligrams a day, because what can happen is there's a thing called rebound scurvy, where if you take really high dose vitamin C all the time and you stop, you actually become deficient in it.
Yes.
So so just use your diet where you can. Vitamin D is a little bit different because we've got sunscreen now. We're told to stay out of the sun. We don't get much sun in the winter. I can't remember the stats. We've got something on our website, but pretty much everyone is deficient.
I think it's 80%.
Yeah, it's a massive amount of the population deficient in it. So I take a vitamin D. I take 1,000 IU of vitamin D every single day. and that's probably, I'm sure that's something you would recommend as well, isn't
Oh,
it?
1000%. Every
Yeah.
single athlete I work with is straight away address any potential deficiencies.
Mm,
If they can afford it, I'd always advocate for a blood test.
mm.
But yeah, straight away the touching points I'd always go for is vitamin D, and then I'd discuss about their diet and see if they have many omega-3.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
omega-3 places they would get omega-3 from,
mm.
and they're the instant two first things I'd address.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, very good. Have you got anything more to add, Cav, or are we?
Well, I guess it kind of links back to what you said about mixed training, but one thing I'd say is overtraining, just
Mhm.
lightly.
Yeah.
That if you feel bad, it's not because you've not trained hard enough. And it can be a bit of a spiral sometimes, overtraining, thinking you need to train harder or do more. And I think it's a pitfall a lot of decent amateur athletes get into, where like, oh, I'm doing 2 sessions a week at the minute, so I'm not improving, so I need to do 3 a week.
Mm.
And like into this cycle of thinking that hard is better.
More is better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, progress in elite sport is generally really boring.
Mm.
Like it is like I'll say that I think I myself is a bit odd, because I love cycling in the sense that I love just tapping away.
Mm.
For some people they might not find that interesting, but
Mm.
if you can't be comfortable with just repeating the same stuff, and that you need all this big mix of stuff, I think it can lead to definitely overtraining and like chasing your tail and a bit of a downward spiral in terms of like sensations in relationship with the sport and things like that.
Yeah, when I coach people, obviously you will have done it as well. You sort of periodize training, so you would get, you'd say, look, I'm expecting you to feel tired now.
Yeah.
Push through. Because next week you've got off.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that works, but I think sometimes I would have athletes who were feeling tired when they shouldn't be feeling tired.
Exactly.
And I just say, scrap the session, just bin the session. And sure enough, they might have some intervals to do, and they just, like the first one, the wattage is right down. And I'd say to them, look, if that happens, bin the session. And they bin the session. I say, get some carbs in, look after yourself, do it next day. What's a backup?
Yeah.
And it can sometimes just be that 24 hours. And it's the difference between just listening to your body, isn't it? And not panicking and thinking I'm losing form. It's actually that common sense of, you've done a lot of training. Your fitness is there. You're tired for this one. Maybe sometimes you can't explain it. It could have been that you've worked too hard, or you've missed a meal, or
underlying illness or life stress. All these things like drain your bucket, like your energy, effort bucket, your psychology bucket, whatever you want to call it, your resilience bucket. That if you've got stress at work, if you've got stress at home, if you're got an underlying illness you don't know about, you've had a bad night's sleep, all these things can drain that bucket. And there's so many different factors, and just pushing through all the time is definitely not the answer.
No, couldn't agree more. I found that really interesting, actually. Thanks for that, Cav. Really good. Well, hopefully you did as well, and we'll be back with podcast 4 at some point. We don't know what it's going to be on yet, but we'll dream something up, won't we? So thanks for listening.